Okay, sitting in my greenhouse here just because it's a lovely day. Um, so we are just about coming to the end of spring wood phase and entering the summer fire phase. Um, that will be happening at the end of next week, where we will shift out of wood energy and into fire energy. And this is why um, the cross quarter days are where they are. So this cross quarter day, the day that's uh, equidistant between the spring equinox and the summer solstice, is the cross quarter day, that in Celtic tradition is called Beltane, which is why I put these retreats at these places, is because they are natural shifts in movement, almost like a threshold or doorway to the new energies that are coming in. So one of the things that I notice working with people over time is that there are always kind of patterns or waves of issues that people come in with that are, it seems like I'm addressing the same kind of thing over and over and over again in a day or a week or something like that. And so one of the things that happens in springtime is, because of the upward rising energy that is spring, it's, the energy that it takes to get plants to jump up out of the soil and split their seeds and unfurl their leaves. That rapid growth phase that is spring, if in some way that is not able to move freely, we end up with what in Chinese medicine we call qi stagnation. And because it's has to do with the springwood phase, it's called liver qi stagnation, because the liver is one of the two organs that are to do with um, spring. So what that ends up looking like when you can't um, somehow manifest this sort of movement in your life is, it firstly feels like stress, and then it will feel like frustration and anger and irritability and so on. And given what we're seeing in the world right now, a lot of people are feeling that. So um, because also wood energy carries vision and planning and decision making that is what's called just and exact, so correct, with the idea of that which sustains life being correct, just and exact. Those are aspects of the wood element phase, spring. And so what we're seeing from our leadership is not that. Decisions being made that um, have uh, poor prognoses, basically, for life on the planet generally, but particularly human life, in terms of needless suffering and in some cases even death. Um, so this is antithetical to the movement of spring. So we all have feelings about that. Some of them are ours personally, and a lot of that is belonging to the collective. And so, you know how when you walk into a wedding, it feels different than if you walked into a funeral. It's because your heart organ senses all the emotion and feeling of what's going on in the room, and you co-regulate to that. So um, a lot of what's going on in the world, a lot in the world that we are feeling in ourselves, is us co-regulating to everyone else's distress. So just know that a lot of the stress and emotion and so on that we have about what's going on is not ours personally. So this is what I was talking about in the piece that I did a few weeks ago called Righteous Anger to Soul's Flowering, because that is the movement of springwood to summer fire. And so when this movement can't happen, you get one of two things. It's sort of a buildup of pressure that feels like stress, anger. Sometimes people get irritable and snappy. And the other thing that happens is it collapses. Like if a little plant is trying to rise up out of the ground and there's a rock set up on top of it, at some point it's just going to give up and sort of collapse. And so what that looks like in people is depression. So one of the things that came up in our circle the other night was people were feeling pretty low. And some of that is our own disposition and our own patterns that we get into. And some of it, and it's greatly influenced by what is going on in the world, where we don't feel like we can fully manifest our lives and sort of soul's mission, what we came here to do in the current political climate or economic climate or whatever the things are that make it difficult for us to fully manifest ourselves. So this movement that is up and out, the up and out energy of spring, as we've talked about, carries the primary emotion of hope. And when we don't have the vision, we can't see where this is going to a positive outcome, where we can't see what our life looks like going forward a little bit, where we can't figure out how to make a plan because the pieces are moving. It's hard to plan on a vacation if the airlines are doing crazy things, or plan on a vacation if you're having to count on a certain income stream happening that may not be entirely solid. So there's a lot of that happening right now. So it's hard if you can't have the vision, you also can't have hope, if that makes sense, because that energy carries, spring energy just carries hope. And if your spring energy is not fully manifesting, then your hope can't fully manifest either. And so when we lose hope, and if we can't manifest this and we end up doing this, we get hopeless, which we would say feels like depression. Okay, so now the sun's coming out and it's getting quite hot in here. Cracking the door open a little bit. Okay, so I was wanting to make sure that we basically had our energy systems working well and not getting stopped up with emotion, because as we move into summer fire, if you add heat to that, heat, warmth, more upward energy to it, it ends up feeling like a pressure cooker. It can get pretty unpleasant that way. So that is why I wrote the piece about the righteous anger, because if we don't have a kind of an awareness and a way of working with that, the stagnant energy that either turns into being this righteous anger or depression, if we don't have a way of moving that energy, then it won't be prettier with summer fire energy. Okay, so summer fire is all about joy is the primary emotion of fire. So your capacity to feel joy comes from the fire. It's, let me just see, don't want to wander around too much. All right. Okay, so it's, this is where joy, laughter, connection, warmth, like emotional warmth, come from the desire for union, whether it's like with an intimate partner or with you know, your community, people working together. It is the phase of maturation. So like in a human life, this is age 20 to 40. So it's when you're going to get married and have kids if you're going to do it. But in nature, it's a time of full flowering, which is the sexual body of the plant, basically. So it's making seeds and reproducing. So in human beings, this is um, love, joy, relationship. So the thing about fire that is good to know is that there are two aspects to this love joy relationship. One of them is the vertical and the other one is the horizontal. So what I mean by that is that we have this is like those cameras that my mother used to have in the 60s that you look down into a viewfinder on the top and it takes a picture of what's in front of her. And so she's looking at an upside down image here and taking this snapshot. So what's happening in there is just that there's a mirror that's reflecting what she's looking at in front of her up into her eye. So all the other organs have two, I mean, all the other elements have two organs that are associated with it. So wood is liver, gallbladder, water is kidney, bladder, earth is spleen, stomach, and metal is lung, colon. Fire is the exception to this and it has four. Two of them have physical organs associated, and two of them are, we might say, functions. So in this, we have the heart and small intestine as a pair, and the other two are the heart protector and triple heater are the two functions. So the heart and the small intestine are working in the vertical, and the triple heater and the pericardium are working in the horizontal. So when you incarnate, your soul, your consciousness, there is a spark, there's a piece of the divine, your soul consciousness as a piece of the divine that comes with you and is housed in this body. It lives in your heart. So when I introduce myself, I say, hi, I'm Amy. It's not, hi, I'm Amy. We live here in the heart. The soul, our essence, our consciousness lives in our heart. And so this is what this is referring to, is the connection to the truth of who we are. So this little Shen, this little spark of the divine that lives in your heart, is in constant connection to the divine. And it is a Sufi teaching, and probably others, that teach that at the top of the breath, and this is why we do this with the floss breath, at the top of the breath, in the space between the top of the in-breath and the out-breath, you plug yourself back into your higher self, soul self, divine self, and get a little recharge that you then carry down into life. So this is why this breath thing is super important, is because when we bring a consciousness to the idea that we're plugging into the sun, the stars, the oneness, your higher self, soul self, divine self, then you take something that's mundane into the profound. You know, just bringing conscious awareness to something changes it entirely. So, okay, so this is the vertical aspect of the heart. And you might be asking, why small intestine? I had that question for a long time. The small intestine, like on the physical level, it sorts out what the old books say, pure from the impure. So it's like all the stuff that you eat, it absorbs what you can actually turn into yourself, and it lets go of the rest to be excreted. And so at the level of the mind, emotion, and spirit, you're doing the same thing. You don't want to, the heart has to be protected, right? So you only want to let in what you can actually turn into yourself. And so this is why I say, you know, be very careful of what you do with the news or hanging around what we call toxic people or things like that. It's because if your small intestine at the level of the mind emotion is a little bit porous, almost like the equivalent of leaky gut in the physical, then toxic things tend to get through, and guess who it disturbs? It disturbs the heart. This is why, like for me, too much news or hardly any news gives me anxiety, because my small intestine function is just too porous. It allows too much through. And most of the time that works fine because of the way that I move through the world. I need to be pretty perceptive of what's going on in order to be able to work with people. So I have a little bit of extra intuition that comes that way, but you get a lot of information with that, and it's not always positive. So anyway, that's the vertical connection, heart, small intestine. So then what happens is that this beam of light, your soul, spirit, divine light, comes down to your heart, and then that mirror, the Sufis call it the mirror of the heart, reflects that out into the horizontal world. So this is your ability to love and experience joy and intimacy and connection and so on in this horizontal plane. This is those things between you and the divine. Pericardium, heart protector, and triple heater are your capacity to reflect the warmth and light of the divine into the world through your own heart. So that's what the fire element is all about. And we want that to be happening, because that is really in a big way, the sort of point of at least what I'm doing with all this work with people, is helping people, the Sufis say, to polish that mirror, to help make the truth of who you are, your true essential nature, what it is that you came to be, your soul's mission, all of that, to be able to be reflected well into the world despite the crazy of what's going on. So so when our fire is working well, both vertically and horizontally, we have balance, joy, warmth, connection, healthy relationships, good boundaries, a passion for life, emotional steadiness. And when our fire is not working very well, you're going to have the opposite of all that. Insecurity in relationships, relationship drama, poor relationship boundary. It can possibly be unhealthy sexual expression or emotional expression, over attachment or disconnection, a loss of joy, mood swings, anxiety, and so on. And interestingly, one of the ways that we see, like in Chinese medicine, if we talked about somebody who has experienced mania, this is heat in the heart. You can imagine that overjoy, over everything's way too big, over expression, over promiscuous sexually, spending too much money. These are all aspects of somebody who's in mania. One of the ways that it's recognized is going to be called pressured speech. And so this is somebody who just can't stop talking and is talking very fast because of the heat in the heart. So what this tells us about is that language and speech are to do with the heart. And so this is why gossip is really injurious to the heart. It's injurious to your heart as a gossiper, and it's injurious to the heart of whoever's being gossiped about. So correct speech is an aspect of the fire element. Okay, so there's another piece of this that I want to record for you, but I gotta go do something right now in the next 10 minutes, and I'll just come back to this. And I'll send you a separate video. Okay.